the transfer portal is closed. So there you go. That was your spring transfer portal period. So now that we have all of the portal window closed for this year, and you pretty much know who's going to be on your teams now, what do we make of all this? Well, the first team I want to talk about is LSU, because that's the team that fundamentally took itself from very much a question mark to very much a college football playoff contender. And I'm not sure, outside of LSU circles, I'm not sure how much the general college football public understands what just happened here, but they got the number one transfer portal class. They took 11 blue chip kids, and it's not one position group. Like Texas, defensive line, yes. Penn State, wide receiver, yes. At LSU, it's D-line, it's wide receiver, it's DB, it's offensive line. They were on the precipice. Honestly, they were on the precipice of major overhaul down there, because had they stood still and not done anything in the portal, they were going to lose more games than is acceptable for LSU this fall. And I would have expected coaching staff change. Candidly, that's where I thought it was headed. And then they got their act together. Certain people particularly down there got their act together, and they've been rewarded handsomely lately. And instead of what I just said, they are a bona fide playoff contender now. Now, this is not a team yet. A bunch of guys who have never worn the LSU uniform in a game are going to be depended upon to provide that kind of product on the field. It's no guarantee. We've seen Florida State shine and crumble entirely trying to go the portal route. I think LSU just knocked it out of the park as thoroughly as they could. Now, listen, Austin Thomas is a rock star down there. He's the general manager at LSU, and you may be seeing headlines around there. Some guy named Austin Thomas just got his salary doubled. Dude's going to be making close to $1 million a year. He's probably underpaid based on what he was just able to do with this particular portal class, where LSU would have been, where they are now, and what it took to make it happen. And the folks that he had to knock some truth and sense into to make it happen, that dude just came through for LSU. So I know there are a lot of general manager names that float around out there, as they should. You better insert Austin Thomas in there, because if LSU is anywhere in this race like I think they'll be this year, he had a ton to do with it. And congrats to him on the salary bump, by the way. Very well deserved. Texas Tech pulled the lever very hard. You see them right there. They're the number 2 portal class, but they're by far the biggest just all-in portal lever puller, as I would call it. You could call it portal dice roll or portal roulette. I just call it the portal lever. Lever. You choose the pronunciation. But they looked at the landscape and they said, well, we print money here, and the rules are what they are for at least one more cycle. So let's just go all in. We haven't had a double-digit win season since 2008. Let's just go all in. And all in they went. They took 20 kids. They took 13 blue chip kids. I was out there about 3 weeks ago, and I'll tell you this, and you can take it for what it is. It could mean everything. It could mean nothing. When you walk around the building there, they look physically, when you just watch the players walk around, it looks like you're in Ann Arbor or Athens or somewhere like that. Maybe not quite Athens, but if you go to South Carolina or you go to Arkansas, Arkansas is a really good example. Just anywhere where you're in one of those major conferences, there are alien-like bodies just walking around the hallway. And you wonder, where did they find these people? It's what it looks like at Texas Tech right now. And the reason is because they went to all those other places and got their players. So I am morbidly fascinated to see how this plays out this fall, because there's a really unique dynamic there. On one hand, like I said, they haven't won 10 or more games since '08. So you would not classically think of Texas Tech as this pressure cooker of a job. So therefore, you would not think of Joey McGuire as being under disproportionate amounts of pressure this fall, but he is. But let me cut in really quick and ask, look, prayer hands, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you think you're subscribed, check and make sure. Over 50% of you aren't. It's free, it doesn't sign you up for anything, and it helps us keep the show free, college football year-round, the way God intended it. All right, back to the clip. Because they don't care about what their history is, because they've never gone all in on a season like they are now in the past. So they don't care about the past. They're saying, well, our expectations for this fall are based on how all in we are for this fall. Now, Joey gets it. I've talked to him about it. He gets it. He embraces it. What else are you going to do? So Texas Tech's going to be a fun one to watch this fall. Oregon, again, a team in Oregon that everyone blindly is ready to expect to be in the national championship hunt every year. I am one of those people. I'm not blind. I know what they've done, but if I didn't know what they've done, but I only knew who was in charge there, I think, yeah, Oregon, kind of like FanDuel. FanDuel would blindly make Oregon one of the favorites, just like they do Georgia or Texas. They're the kind of brand now that is earned benefit of the doubt, and they're always going to be in that conversation. Well, here's the thing. Oregon could have had terminal issues on the offensive line had they not addressed it. They could have been a team that came into this season and you looked at it and you said, what wide receiver has been for Penn State lately, O-line will be for Oregon. Don't care how good they are elsewhere, that offensive line is going to hold them back. Then they went and got Isaiah World at left tackle, and they got Emmanuel Pregnon at guard, and they got Alex Harkey at right tackle, and they just fundamentally overhauled their offensive line. As I always say in portal segments, that's no guarantee it'll play out. Every year we see abject busts out of the portal. We also know that some of these schools are far more cerebral in their approach to the portal than others. Therefore, they're going to have a higher hit rate than others. Malachi Hughes, also a running back out of Tulane. When I was down at Tulane last month, John Summerall talked about that kid like he was his agent. And he didn't owe him anything, but he just said the kid's going to destroy it at Oregon. And then they went and got Thieneman, I believe, the safety out of Purdue. That's probably a plug-and-play all Big Ten caliber safety for Oregon. So I don't want to say it's just on the O-line, but their over-under win total is 10.5 again this year. They're the number 2 favorite in the odds to win the Big Ten. Again, big caveat, big asterisk. If all of those pieces gel and the injury luck is on their side, copy and paste for every team. Oregon had a huge and very necessary haul in the portal. Miami, I think we could do a whole show on how important Carson Beck is. We just watched Miami pump out the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Did you see they had Restrepo go undrafted? And then the Titans proceeded to pick him up and put him with Cam Ward. I don't know how the rest of the league allowed that, but anyway. So Cam Ward out the door, and it is very much true that they pissed away a shot at doing a lot more than they did last year because they couldn't do anything defensively to couple with having Cam Ward, just like LSU with Daniels the year before. You don't want to call it a wasted season because it's not like they went 5-7 or anything like that, but they greatly underachieved. And that's crazy because Miami had double-digit wins last year. And so relative to recent history, that's a great year. Relative to what they were capable of, had they been better defensively, they underachieved. So Mario Cristobal didn't really wait around. He fired a bunch of guys on the defensive side of the ball and went and changed defensive coordinators, but also they went in the portal after being 94th in explosive plays allowed last year, and they overhauled their entire secondary. They got a pair of corners, I think 3 corners. They got a safety, D-line help. Wonder on the other side if there's still some wide receiver help out there maybe for them, but that all just funnels back down to the main event there, and that is, how's Carson Beck going to play? As it stands right now at FanDuel, Miami has the second best odds to win the league this upcoming year. Clemson's your pretty solid favorite right now in the odds market. So Miami certainly, pretty much everything defensively had to be scrutinized after last year. You can't let that happen again. You saw USC and LSU really hit that button last year and start to scale up their defensive performance. That needs to be Miami this year. They won't be a top 10 defense in the country. They just need to be way better than they were last year. Penn State and Texas, these are not teams that had top to bottom needs, but they had glaring needs at certain positions. I thought they both filled that out pretty nicely. I think Penn State forever has felt like they got to get help at wide receiver, and finally they did. They got Hudson out of USC, Devontae Ross out of Troy, Trevor Pena this past weekend. Knew he had taken a visit to Penn State. He had Miami, USC had some others. Penn State stepped up, and they got him. That's probably your best 3 receivers on that team this year, and they're all transfer portal additions. So we don't know this because you can't know any of this at this point. But I think it's pretty easy to say outside of receiver, Penn State's got a lot of known commodities coming back from a team that was in, the semifinals last year. So Penn State's a pretty reliable contender this year. But you may have looked at them and said, yeah, but, that wide receiver room's not going to win a national title. That wide receiver room's not going to win the Big Ten. They can't. There's a permanently enhanced ceiling on that team's potential as long as that wide receiver room looks like that. Okay. Unbeknownst to us, the key could have been put in the ignition and turned on the team's potential with these additions, which is always the fun, second of the two sides of the coin this time of year, because everyone can talk about the bust potential, but what you don't know is whether Penn State scenario A this upcoming season was going to be just shy of being good enough, and yet they just created a scenario B for themselves by adding 1, 2, or all 3 of these receivers. You never know that. And that's why I always love taking these kind of segments and looking back on them in November. Because at that point, the guesswork's over, and you know what caliber team you have. You know who did and didn't pan out of the portal. But it wouldn't surprise me if we get to November and Penn State's offense has just ticked up a notch or two, and you're looking back and you're saying, wow, those receiver additions, I don't know how much they paid those guys. It was worth its weight in gold because everything else was ready-made to win. And they got the final missing piece. Texas, you could say the same thing about D-line with them. They've been stockpiling talent so well that the past 2 years consecutively, the draft has gutted them, specifically on the interior of their defensive line. So I think they added 10 kids in the portal, and half of them were defensive linemen. And they had to do it. They had to do it. So elsewhere, they're a pretty ready-made winner too. They added guys 333, 311, 305, 330, 313. The lightest of the defensive linemen they added was 305 pounds. Every other one of them 311 or heavier. So moving Texas off the ball this fall could prove challenging, which would fall right in line with what they've been like recently. What didn't happen in the portal? That's a very important headline as well. What didn't happen? I'll tell you what didn't happen. In the spring portal window, Ohio State didn't lose a kid. Alabama, I think they're the only team in the SEC that didn't lose a kid in the spring portal window. That's important. That was not the headline last year, especially for Alabama. So that is very important. I'll tell you another one. Arizona State. They lost a couple of guys, but they didn't lose any frontline guys. And you should pay attention. Those of you who like to keep meticulous notes, Arizona State went to the playoff last year. They won the Big 12. They went to the playoff last year. You would think that kind of team would have their coaching staff get gutted and they would have their roster get gutted. And neither of those things happened. And I'll tell you, he wouldn't mind this. I was out there a couple of weeks ago, and when I go out there, I sit in on everything. Kenny Dillingham goes to the bathroom, and I walking, all right, I'll sit out here for this, but everything else I want to observe, right? He goes, right, I'll be out in a second. And I went in their team meeting, and he sat there and told that entire room, he told that entire team, you want to go in the portal? You want to get out of here? Just let me know. Not only will we facilitate it, I'll help you. I will promote you. I don't want anyone here who don't want to be here. And that is the antithesis, candidly, of the way it is most other places. Dillingham, he almost encouraged guys to hit the portal, not because he actually wanted them to, but because anybody who had an inkling of a doubt they wanted to be on that team, he wanted to go ahead and proactively, let's start the process. Let's get you out of here. So they had a few backup types that he helped get out of there and find new spots, but none of their starters left. And that coaching staff's intact. So this fall, I'd make them the favorite in the Big 12 again this fall because of that. But the Big 12 is going to be very, very fun to watch. But just remember all this spring portal window, a lot of teams just fundamentally altered the conference and playoff pictures respectively this fall. You can't quite know where. I got good guesses, but you can't quite know where.